So, just thankfully, there was a change in leadership. Sane people are running HBO now under AT&T, and they have no reason to... The people who made seasons 5 through 8 of Game of Thrones, who picked and supported that, like Richard Plepler, picked Long Night. The men who approved that Confederate show, Plepler and Blois, approved Long Night. But entirely different people are now watching it, and just the same week, days later, order another pilot. So, leads next section, next big question. What are the prequel ideas in contention now? Well, Martin said and has reiterated as late as this August, last month, there are still 3 active pitches. Jane Goldman's Long Night plus 2 other things. And this lines up with rumblings I heard on Westeros.org from people who are moderators who interact with Martin and go to convention panels he's at, or with people interact with people who in turn interact with Martin. Just rumblings from people in the know among the book fandom on Westeros.org, who without substantiation said that they had in turn heard rumblings from people that it came down that they had heard, and might be wrong, that there are 3 frontrunner ideas. As early as about a year ago, I mean, maybe 6 months ago, I heard that there's still 3 frontrunner ideas, which they listed off as Long Night, Dance of the Dragons, and the Valyria prequel by Max Borenstein, which is called Empire of Ash. The 4th idea was almost assuredly the Targaryen conquest, given Martin's comments that he said, well, there's 2 big prequel ideas from Fire and Blood, and those are the 2 big eras it covers. But really, the dance is a similar and better idea to the conquest. If you're looking at the differences in scale and story style, it's a lot more cohesive for television than the conquest. If you had to pick one or the other, you'd go with dance. But I still have no idea what the 5th pitch was. So anyway, like 6 months ago, even a full year ago, I remember, actually I think it was as early as August of 2018, I was seeing these rumblings that the 3 that they're seriously considering are Long Night, The Dance, and Valyria. So nothing has changed. If you've been following my channel here, I made a big leak last year, both here and on Game of Thrones Wiki, about the Valyria prequel, and to this day, HBO doesn't even acknowledge that pitch is real. Even though I openly admit it's just a pitch, and they aren't ordering it, and I'm trying to drum up support for it. No, this is a better idea. They should go with the Valyria prequel. And the pitch I saw was real. I saw the series Bible over a Skype video for 2 hours, leafing through it, showing me this is real. This isn't made up in like an email or something. So, what is the current status of that? What is the current status of the Valyria prequel, Empire of Ash? I honestly have no idea. Though, again, all of this lines up with what I heard last year, and it wasn't changed. It was one of the front runners, this Long Night and Dance, and Martin has continued to say, as late as last month, that there are 3 active pitches. And he said when, the 4th idea got scrapped, but there's still 3 left. If there were only 2 ideas left, he would have said that. And for all I know this week, that may have changed, but as recently as last month, there were 3 ideas. I don't think they formally passed over Empire of Ash just yet, given how much work went into it. Their series Bibles, its writing staff haven't ordered a pilot either, but we might have to wait a while on that, or we might hear something new. It is just a pilot phase. Who knows how well Ryan Condal can do on a Dance of the Dragons pilot. But frankly, if you're worried, some people talk about this on Twitter, I fundamentally take this as good news for those of you hoping for Empire of Ash, because it means the Long Night prequel just got dethroned. Emphasize that the bubble has burst of HBO and Casey Bloys going, everything is fine, there are no other prequels, this is amazing, we don't need Martin's books and what prequels he would pick. No, that era is over after Season 8 and after the AT&T buyout. I mean, HBO instantly asking for a different prequel pilot idea mere days after seeing the rough cut of the Long Night pilot. A month ago, most major news sites considered the very idea of contradicting Long Night as the only prequel as a pipe dream. Now there's blood in the water, and the sharks will come. Now that The Long Night isn't the assumed lock for the upcoming prequel, it opens things up. On the whole, this is good news for Empire of Ash. Though really, I'm also a huge Dance of the Dragons fan. Guys, my channel logo is the Rhaenyra sigil, and has been since 2017. The Rhaenyra sigil crossed with a sword and a writing pen, because we're here to defend the prequels. That's my badge of those who will make sure the prequels are saved, and unlike what Benioff and Weiss did to the original show. A writing pen to stand in for how we use our words as weapons, and a sword to stand in for how we use actual weapons on our enemies. This is a problem we want to have, like a normal franchise not run by crazy people like Benioff and Weiss. This is the type of problem fans normally want to have. Which nice prequel would we like to do first? You know, if this was run by not book fans, it's not book fans versus TV fans. It's attentive fans versus hype fans. Even attentive TV-only fans of the early seasons were disgusted by the later TV seasons. That this is what normal franchises deal with, of which nice prequel would we like to do first out of a good selection. Not, oh my god, there's something really wrong with Long Night. It's a terrible idea, which is what everyone was saying even before we heard rumors. You see, the dance is interesting, but we wouldn't really be visiting new locations and cultures so much as rounding out pre-existing locations and cultures, which kind of got shorted in the original TV series. You know, like actually showing a significant amount of Casterly Rock, or they skipped Storm's End entirely, even though we saw the Baratheons for budget reasons in early seasons. So rounding out stuff we already saw, like a lot more King's Landing and Harrenhal, but it wouldn't be like, oh wow, this season we see Braavos as much. Well, we might see a bit more of the Free Cities, but it's not like, oh wow, here's Marine this season. We're not going to see new things on that scale again. But rounding out things that I really think got shorted from the prior seasons. And also, the dance will be drawing on the most prequel material that Martin has written until now, 60,000 words. Empire of Ash is at the other end of the spectrum, visiting a lot of exciting new locations, which we've heard of but never really experienced before, and largely adapting stuff from the Beyond Westeros sections of World of Ice and Fire, the 2014 source book. But they're more outlines, not the full narratives Martin set down for the dance. And truly, both have their selling points. Do you round out pre-existing stuff doing a better job than the original show, or visit a bunch of exciting new locations? In contrast, The Long Night was neither. A rehash of the White Walker storyline, set only in Westeros, not new locations, and not drawing on any significant written material. So it managed to simultaneously be a rehash that had nothing familiar in it. That is quite the achievement. But Empire of Ash versus The Dance, this is a discussion worth having. Back in 2011, before we got hurt as bad as we did, this is the kind of debate that a successful franchise would be having. I mean, I've seen a lot of people who want a prequel set entirely in Yiti, their fantasy version of China, and that's interesting. We haven't seen it before, but Martin didn't really write that much about it. And, people from Yiti are in Empire of Ash, so there's people who want exciting new spin-offs set in places we've never seen before. Like Star Wars, you can't just have every prequel be Tatooine and Endor. That would get kind of repetitive. But if we never visited Tatooine again, I'd be going, oh man, why don't we ever see Tatooine anymore? So you want a mix of both. With different projects, some are focused on old things, rounding them out more. Some are focused on new things. Both have their merits, where Long Night somehow managed to goof up both sides of that. Now, a couple of news sites are reporting that HBO might consider making two prequels at a time, one in spring and one in fall, Long Night and Dance of the Dragons. Yes and no. yes, after AT&T bought HBO, they actually rather openly said that they would consider running 2 prequels per year, maybe. Whereas we used to think it was an insane idea. They said, well, if you have 2 really good ideas, we consider it. Like as a big franchise to compete with other big franchises like Star Wars, you need multiple installments. Because after all, they need to compete with everyone else trying to make the next Game of Thrones in the streaming wars. Like Netflix has Witcher, or Amazon's Lord of the Rings and Wheel of Time series that are in production. So the idea is, hey, if Amazon is running 2 major fantasy series, Lord of the Rings and Wheel of Time at the same time, maybe we should be pumping out more content to compete with that. AT&T said we will pump in money to HBO to be a giant new media platform like that. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that AT&T might give them the money to make 2 prequels if they have 2 good pitches. But on the other hand, don't assume that one of those 2 concurrently running prequels will automatically be The Long Night. People are going, oh, well, I guess they'll run Dance of the Dragons and Long Night. If they announce the Dance of the Dragons prequel pilot like a month from now, maybe. But the way this came down, I need to stress, the same week HBO's new leadership finally saw the Long Night rough cut pilot, there came news that they instantly want a different pilot on something else. This really does not seem like they feel confident in Long Night. So could we see 2 prequels at the same time? I still think that's a possibility. 1 spring, 1 fall, but not Long Night. So really, my wish list best case scenario, which is by no means impossible, just best case scenario here, guys, is if AT&T wants HBO to run 2 prequels at the same time, 1 spring, 1 fall, maybe those 2 could be Dance of the Dragons and Empire of Ash. Because there's no way any sane person would greenlight the Long Night prequel, a full series. I had this whole other video up that I've heard rumors that it shoehorned in racial diversity in such a way that it not only messes up the story, but is very racist and insulting anyway, which would satisfy no one, because they jumped into it on name recognition for Starks and Lannisters and White Walkers without thinking, wait a minute, there aren't any black people in the Bronze Age of Westeros, it's just druids and Celts and stuff. But I heard that a year ago, verbally with no evidence, because it was a year ago. They might have changed their mind since then. I had this whole video up on that, but other people convinced me, look, you're teasing everyone, and I'm unwilling to actually say what they're doing without solid evidence, because it could have changed, so I've pulled back on that, and if more news confirming what I was told comes out, I'll tell everyone. I don't want to keep teasing people, just I have heard of problems which we didn't even anticipate. And that's not mentioning the problems we did anticipate, that it's not based on anything. There are no characters there. And on top of that, there's no dragons in it. The storylines from the Age of Heroes, on top of that, Land the Clever does not have an interlinking story with Bran the Builder, the founder of House Stark. And they're just going to mash them all together for the sake of trying to build a prequel era that never really existed? But moving on, I'm not the only one saying there's a serious chance AT&T might want HBO to produce 2 prequels at the same time to compete with all these new streaming rivals. And even if they make the dance first, if you think I'm freaking out, I'm not. I started out as a Tolkien fan. We know the value of patience. We have waited long. How long we waited for those movies in the early 2000s. Just patience. That even if they make the dance first, I like Empire of Ash not just as a TV show, but as an idea for an entire prequel era, that Martin never really said what Valyria was like. And this is like learning about the Dance of the Dragons era, learning about the Blackfire Rebellion's era, that this is a prequel era that we learned of first through a TV show pitch instead of the books, but which I still think is pretty much book canon because they were outlines Martin gave them through their notes. So even if we don't get a TV show this year, I hope we get one in 5 years, as an ongoing franchise, like how Star Wars plans stuff out in advance. This was one of their more successful ideas, Valyria. Just as, how many people in the comments here, if you think, oh, I'm sour grapes here, how many people, even in the comments, are going to go, man, I look forward to a Targaryen conquest series, when you know it isn't coming out next year? Or there are a lot of people in the comments here who are going to be, I look forward to a Blackfire Rebellion prequel or a Dunk and Egg prequel, when we know they're not going to make Dunk and Egg until after the main novels are finished, but you still actively go, I think this would be a good TV show someday. Dunk and Egg. I feel the same way about the Valyria prequel. But there's still hope they might do both. There's still hope, not all is exhausted yet, that we might hear Empire of Ash news soon, because they're willing to do more than one prequel. But just things are in flux now, because no one anticipated them rejecting Long Night prequel that quickly, or at least no one who worked for HBO anticipated that it would be that bad. We did, but... So things are in flux now. Keep checking YouTube and other news channels often, because things are in motion now. We live in interesting times. The things are exploding into chaos. That no, the Long Night prequel pilot was terrible. Hey, being forced to choose in general concept between a Dance of the Dragons prequel or a Valyria prequel is a problem I want to have. And I want to close out with one new thing I found out from all this. This is new, which I was only vaguely aware of before. I knew there was something going on. There are complications regarding which prequels HBO makes, given that Martin signed over the rights to certain prequels to them, but not others. But he wants to make the ones he didn't sign the rights over. He just retains the rights to them. And look, they plausibly could make some, given that they have adaptation rights to the main A Song of Ice and Fire novels. They have the rights to the Song of Ice and Fire novels, during which these are historical events which are mentioned in passing. So, they don't have the rights to Dunk and Egg in terms of every book he writes about. Like a future Dunk and Egg, they don't have the rights to, because he hasn't written it yet. But because Dunk and Egg have been mentioned, they've even been mentioned by name in the main TV show, you could plausibly get an HBO one. So that's why it gets murky. This is directly comparable to all of those headaches we had with the Lord of the Rings prequels. How the Tolkien estate still has the rights to content from the First Age covered in the Silmarillion, even though these are all past events characters in the Third Age mention. They mention Beren and Luthien. So they had to play around with how much they could say. And in Amazon's prequels, there's been this whole thing with Shippy saying it's in the Second Age and we have to dance around. We technically can't say too much about the First Age in detail, but obviously these are historical events, so people would mention them. It's a dance, a delicate balancing act, working out, well, what do we have the rights to say and what don't we have the rights to say, because we have rights to a prequel era later than the one that we don't have rights to. So, like with Dunk and Egg, that they don't technically have the rights. They could make a Dunk and Egg without his permission, but without his stuff, but it would be terrible. But he wouldn't want them to make a terrible one. He'd give them full stuff. I'm not really sure how they do that, but they generally seem to be respecting his wishes on don't make Dunk and Egg until I finished it, because that'll be a problem. So all that in mind of the different, well, who has the right to what prequel thing, in the current scenario, in the current situation, I just found out it's this makes sense. Due to complex legal reasons, the current situation is that HBO has creative control over basically any prequel that is primarily set in the continent of Westeros. Even like Andal invasion stuff from World of Ice and Fire, because it's mentioned in the main series of which Westeros is the location. Well, it's the history of Westeros. We have the rights to Westeros. And they could even visit places outside of Westeros, but if the primary setting is Westeros, HBO has creative control over it. However, Martin basically retains full creative control and rights, and thus veto power, over prequels primarily set outside of Westeros. You see, most of what we know about areas outside Westeros, all that mountain of new info from World of Ice and Fire sourcebook from 2014, well, Martin never sold HBO adaptation rights to that, nor can you claim, well, the Andal invasions are mentioned in passing in the main novels. No, like the whole Beyond Westeros section of World of Ice and Fire is such a tenuous link that it doesn't legally hold up. Like, Empire of Ash is the Beyond Westeros prequel. The primary locations are Valyria and their provinces in Sothorios. So a big point that differentiates the Valyria prequel versus a Dance of the Dragons prequel is that Martin would maintain creative control and veto power over specific decisions on Empire of Ash. But Martin would not have creative control on this Dance prequel. Just because, well, they had the rights to Westeros stories because they have the future of Westeros, the current day in Game of Thrones, versus he never sold them the rights to prequels set in other continents that primarily set there. For us, that's a major selling point for the Valyria prequel ahead of a Dance prequel. Unlike Game of Thrones with Benioff and Weiss, Martin would be in full creative control on Empire of Ash. HBO, meanwhile, sees this as a point against picking Empire of Ash for exactly the same reason. What? A living author retaining full creative control over a TV adaptation of their work? This man is delusional. Take him to the infirmary. So the one big piece of news we can gain from all of this is that the new leadership of HBO that came in the past year, who did not pick Long Night last year, now that they actually saw what it's like with a rough cut pilot episode, do not have 100% confidence in it. Long Night prequel has been dethroned. This is the moment the hype bubble burst. Just like you can pinpoint the moment the hype bubble burst for Season 8 as the end of Episode 3 when Arya suddenly appears and kills the Night King. And I warned all you guys last year on my channel that Season 8 would be a disaster, and specifically how. That, based on their prior pattern of behavior, it would be sloppy with a lot of staring and no dialogue, and have random out-of-character moments of heavy emoting scenes, pandering to actor favoritism. That they're showing off actors for Emmys, that they want to show off Maisie Williams as Arya, or pander Emilia Clarke for an Emmy, that they didn't do this to be violent. They consider a big scene of, look at the way it played out, of Emilia Clarke making this epic rage face. It probably took her a week to prepare for that. It took Sophie so much time to prepare the face when she kills Ramsay. That was awards baiting with these big emoting scenes that they love that have no dialogue. And I think that's why they made her burn King's Landing, which I don't think she will do in the books, or at least not for no reason like this. You didn't really set up why this would be happening. This epic rage face is what they wanted. I said something like, I wasn't surprised. I mean, I was surprised they go so far as Arya killing the Night King, but the moment I saw, I went, I thought it would be along these lines. I just didn't think it would be this extent, but that they would show off people at random based on actor favoritism. But at the same time, all this time, I've been warning you that Long Night prequel would also be a failure. I was right on the first count. I'm telling you, Long Night prequel would have something wrong with it. A lot of people didn't believe me. And now here, a lot of other channels went into blind hype, and now here we are with HBO's new leadership days later ordering a pilot on something else. They do not sound confident in it. And I'm not just saying this as a soundbite. I didn't just say it as a soundbite at the end of videos if I don't like Long Night. I made a whole video series breaking down systematically and analyzing why the Long Night prequel is a bad idea in general principle. It's over in my playlist on Long Night on my channel. Please check that out. Well, as you can expect, this announcement pushed my video production schedule back. So yeah, I hope you understand. I'm already working on 2 short new leak videos on the Valyria prequel pitch. Just some notes I didn't get to saying before, which a year has passed. I think I should say more. And even if it's not the first prequel they make, I like it as a concept, or maybe one day it could be like a video game or a board game or an RPG thing. Just as a defined prequel era, the outline was very interesting to me. I do think we'll get it someday, and I still think we'll get it sooner instead of later, because AT&T wants more than one prequel to compete with everyone. And these were, as I was told, the front runners were Long Night, Dance of the Dragons, and Valyria.